Another shoe review, another new brand for conversational pace. We have the Scarpa Spin Planet, and this is the first Scarpa shoe I've ever run in. Finn, what about you? Have you ever put Scarpa on your feet before?
Also, the first Scarpa for me. I've worn a lot of their ski equipment, just also, dabbling a bit in sort of like the local skimo scene here in Salt Lake, but I've never put on a Scarpa shoe. And it actually made me wonder, and maybe we can do this in a future episode, but like it'd be kind of fun to categorize which brands, which trail shoe brands across the world are more dominant in the US versus the ones that are more dominant here in the US. This is certainly a European first brand that we're kind of like bringing to a North American audience, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and definitely, and like we'll go into it later, but this shoe definitely has a lot of Euro DNA, and you can tell. I mean, looking across their lineup of shoes, like they make like mountaineering shoes and ski things, and then trail. I don't even know if trail running shoes is the correct category. It's almost more like mountain running shoes. And the Scarpa Spin Planet on their across their product line, this is considered one of their more runnable shoes. They have one other model that's like the true door to trail shoe, but this is kind of like their high cushion, probably targeted for the North America market trail running shoe.
Mm.
These shoes were provided to us by Scarpa, but we did not get paid or compensated in any way to make this video, so all these thoughts are our own. A few stats about the shoe. So this price comes in at $159 USD. Why 159? Not even the one, like not even 159.99, just 159. We were saying, like you had said in the previous episode, it was at the left digit bias. Don't people also like seeing that the shoe ends in 9 or the price ends in 99 as well?
I think it's something like that, yeah.
So under 160. So that might be the differentiating factor for some people. The weight of this shoe in my size 10, European 43, the shoe's actually all built off of the European sizing scale, and then there's just like equivalent US sizes. So we'll dive into that later, but my size 10 is 12 ounces or 340 grams. The stack of this shoe is 24.5 millimeters in the forefoot, 28.5 millimeters in the heel for a 4 millimeter drop. The shoe's upper is a engineered mesh that, according to the Scarpa website, is made of 100% recycled content. That definitely seems to be the like biggest push for their marketing for the shoe. Is it's sustainable. It's a sustainable shoe. They claim to be like one of the most sustainably built shoes.
Yep.
I guess maybe that's where the whole planet part of the Spin Planet is. Like we're going to keep the planet spinning with the shoe. I don't know. I've thought way too much about all the elements of the shoe, as you can tell. It's a kind of one piece mesh upper. There's plastic overlay across the toe bumper and going through kind of the forefoot. That's really it for plastic overlays. There's some fabric overlays that go around the heel cup, but most of like the additional structure for the arch wrap is actually just tighter knit mesh.
Yep.
And this shoe, I don't know. Would you classify this shoe as having a tongue or not having a tongue? Because it's like the burrito wrap tongue where it starts out as nothing on one side and then just turns into a flap on the other,
I feel like on the left side, someone just took scissors and just cut the upper material, and then that became the tongue. They just cut the left side of the material, and that became the tongue.
Yeah, so it's just flappy on one side. Like I didn't have any problems with it. I think there's a very thin layer of foam in the tongue just to prevent against a little bit of lace bite. I do appreciate the generous cutout right towards the top of the tongue, where most tall tongues cut into the top of your ankle. This one has a giant notch cut out. What else about this upper? Really structured, rigid heel cup and a pretty generous amount of padding around the ankle and the heel. Oh yeah, this this tongue? They gave it a name. They called it the Axial TR Tech, which it says that on the side of the shoe. And I always wondered what the Axial TR Tech was, because to me, this just looked like a little piece of plastic that said a name on it. Yeah. But I guess that was actually describing the tongue. Yeah. The midsole is a pretty standard piece of EVA. Like that's pretty much all they described it on their website. It's 45% recycled content and it's EVA foam. And that's kind of what it feels like. I could not find anywhere whether the shoe had a rock plate or not. I don't think it does. What do you think? I don't see anything, and it feels like there's enough. Like I feel like all the protection was just coming from the foam.
I was going to say the same thing, and it was something I was thinking about pre-review. Is like, if you can't find it in the tech specs, how are you judging it based on feel? Like, what would give you a general sense that this shoe does probably have a rock plate? Because I think we had a similar question. Maybe it was about the Nike Terra Kyger, right, when we were reviewing that shoe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, really, it would just be a matter of if you could feel more versus less rocks in the shoe. I mean, but this midsole foam is pretty firm. I mean, we'll dive into the fit and the feel in a little bit, but I'm thinking that all the rock protection just comes from this pretty decent coverage of the outsole as well as the firm midsole foam. Because if there was a rock plate, I feel like they would have said something about it. But anyways, the outsole is Scarpa's own in-house rubber. It's called Pressa rubber. I don't know what Pressa means, but it kind of feels like Vibram's like Mega Grip. It's like pretty firm. Like the lugs are pretty hard. It's not too soft, but at the same time, the grip was there. It's their ATR compound, again, made of 30% recycled rubber. And one thing that I thought was interesting, and I don't know, this is probably up for debate whether this is just full gimmicky or not, was the website broke down their multi-directional lugs as having 3 different zones. So on the forefoot, the medial and lateral sides are the push zone. So when you're pushing off, you get extra grip there. The heel lugs are the braking area. Okay. And then right under the midfoot and under the center of the forefoot, those are the maximum stability zone lugs. Do you buy that?
I sell that, Brett. What about you?
I mean, I guess, yeah, whatever you need to say to differentiate your lugs from everyone else, which like they're multi-directional lugs. I think almost every shoe has multi-directional lugs, but they gave me some good reading material on their website, and I would rather have more tech specs than not. Last bit I have to say about the materials and the sustainability bit is while that this shoe has, like full recycled upper, 45% recycled midsole, 30% recycled outsole, the box that these shoes came in was one of the densest cardboard I've ever felt for a box. Like that was like pristine primo cardboard. The whole box is completely blue. Like they used a lot of dye for that. The other thing is, if we're going for sole sustainability, this shoe came with a 27-page maintenance and advice guide, 2 extra pieces of paper telling me about the outsole and how the products help to reduce my ecological footprint. So 2 more pieces of paper, plastic loop to go around the laces to keep all 30 pages together, and it came in a little plastic baggie. They also came with an extra set of shoelaces in another plastic baggie. How is that sustainable? Like everything they did in building the shoe for sustainability, I feel like they wrecked it with all the other stuff that they put in the box. Also, the other thing was these shoes came with more paper stuffed in it than any shoe I've ever had before. Like I will be able to wrap Christmas presents for the next 4 years just because of the tissue paper that came in the shoe. That's the end of my sustainability rant. I think Scarpa could do a little bit better.
Alarm bells are sounding off in Scarpa marketing headquarters right now as they rush to create a press release in response to this, but it's the truth. This is just spitting truth here right now.
Yeah, this is all we ever do on Conversational Pace is we spit the truth.
Well, I was going to say, it reminds me to pay attention to the presentation of the shoe, what comes with it in terms of the box, all that kind of, like, I think that's great. That's great observation on your part.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of the
Brooks hasn't put tissue paper in their shoes for upwards of like 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
And I've never gotten a pair of Brooks shoes that were squashed. What kind of mileage did you get in this shoe?
I put 94.7 miles on this shoe. Could have been 0.8. I was just adding all the miles up, and I think it came out to 94.7. Like we said earlier, interesting brand to me. Love the name Spin Planet, regardless of, the implications that you just delivered to the audience. I think it's a good looking shoe. Like, I love the orange and black laces. I think the blue on black on gray on orange colorways are cool. Of those 94 miles, mostly on high mountain terrain in the Salida, Colorado area. I happened to be testing out this shoe when our mutual friend Morgan Olson was getting ready for and racing the High Lonesome 100. Also took it out to Hardrock along with the normal Serac. I think we'll get into, our overall impressions of the shoe. I wore this shoe on the same day that Aurelien Dunand-Pallaz wore this shoe en route to winning at Hardrock this year. So I don't know. I kind of got chills just thinking like, yeah, that's kind of cool.
I think that's pretty much the main motivation for why we continued to like do a full review on the shoes. This is the shoe that won the 2023 Hardrock 100.
It won Hardrock. It won.
That's significant.
And I'm pretty sure, so I think Hilary Girardi, she's an American expat based in France, Grenoble, France. She's had a lot of success on the Skyrunner World Series circuit. She uses this shoe a lot too, from what I understand. So, it's just interesting that there are some high profile trail runners out there, ultra trail runners that have, that enjoy this brand, enjoy this shoe. But yeah, 94.7 miles, a lot of miles on the CDT, a lot of miles on some of those 14ers. I did Mount Shavano in this shoe where there's a lot of scree, techie kind of like rock garden running. Did not do any workouts in it. The longest run I did it was about 3 hours. But yeah, mostly high mountain terrain. How about you?
I got in 38 miles. And that wasn't for lack of trying. So I got in 38 miles. It doesn't really matter where I got in those 38 miles. It was only 38 miles. The reason for that is because the sizing on this shoe is a little bit off. And we took two different approaches with our sizing choices. So this shoe is run on a European sizing scale, but it also runs a little bit small. So according to the Scarpa website, a European 43 is right in between 9.5 and 10. That should be my perfect shoe size. When I got these, it fit closer to a 9. Like my toes were right at the front, and it pretty much disabled me from running any sort of significant downhill in this shoe because I couldn't get a good enough lockdown with the upper, and my toes were just mashing straight up at the front. So I was pretty much limited to like a couple runs where I got in some descending and just like sucked it up. Wasn't fun. And then other than that, it was just some flat running to get a feel for like the cushion and, the transition of the shoe. Whereas what was your European size that you did for this one?
European size was 46, which you suggested would probably run somewhere between a 12 and a 12 and a half. And I think that fit me perfectly.
Yeah. Cause then in theory, it should have been a little bit long, but then it fit closer to like a normal 12.
Like a normal 12. Yeah.
So I think what I learned here is that if you're going to get this shoe, go up like a half a euro size from what, you normally get. Or like if you're like on the bubble like me, go up. So I should have gone 43.5. And I think that probably would have allowed the shoe to be a little bit more runnable. I guess to go on with like the other fit issue that I had was at the very top on the upper, right by the bottom of the eyelets, that piece that does say Axial TR Tech, right where it's stitched into the eyelet. When I bent the shoe, that plastic piece went straight into the top of my foot. Anything running or hiking uphill. And that, like over 40 miles, it didn't break in. So like that's there to stay. So also kind of a deal breaker for me in terms of the upper, because like every step going uphill, I could just feel this thing like poking my foot. And I know, super long runs, that would just, the skin on the top of my foot would just be gone. So those were the two main fit issues for me, is that the shoe runs a little small and I had that plastic piece just going into the top of my toe. Your turn.
That's going to happen sometimes, right? Like we're always going to aspire to get 100 miles on a shoe if and when we can. There are going to be some edge cases where it, for whatever reason doesn't work. Like for me, I think for you too, it might have been like the VJ Ultra earlier this year, and it's just going to happen from time to time.
Didn't work. And I knew, I mean, we had talked earlier, like I know this shoe was working really well for you. So like, that's why we didn't like can the whole review together. Perhaps later on in the future of this channel, maybe we will do, let us know in the comments. Do you want to see a first impressions video of any shoes before we go into the long-term shoe review? Because there already have been some shoes that have not made the cut. So what did you think of the fit?
Well, if it's okay with you, I kind of wanted to talk, just generally about the upper in my experience first. There's two things. Actually, this shoe weirdly reminded me of two shoes that I've really enjoyed a lot in the past. The first is a true blast from the past, at least for me. It's the Hoka Challenger ATR2. I don't know why, but I got shades of this in that shoe, which I loved. It was one of the first shoes I ever put on in the trail scene. And then also the Ultra Duo, not for reasons people might expect, but it's because of what I would call the barely there upper. I really felt like that was on display in this shoe. And I want to talk a bit more about that tongue. So like, hopefully I'm holding this up in the right direction. Maybe we have like a GoPro scene here, but I like how the tongue is constructed as part of the upper on the medial side here. And then it wraps over the foot really neatly. And then it becomes partly attached on the lateral side with that piece of like stretchy material here. I don't think we've used a shoe that has that much of like a stretch material kind of keeping it together here. I loved that because that sort of created that barely there upper feel. And then it kind of comes up high on the ankle, and I never had I felt like I had pretty good ankle support, and I didn't really get any debris coming into the shoe. So that was really nice as well, because I was doing a lot of runs in those scree fields, in those rock gardens, on dusty terrain, and it was just keeping everything inside protected. And then again, in those rocky environments, I do like this piece of like thick overlay that they put on front of the toe box. And so in addition to the roomy feel up here from me, saying they got my sizing right, or I just lucked out with the sizing being right, I felt like there was just a really good rock protection here. And then, in that 1 3-hour long run that I did at altitude, just felt like there was room for my foot to kind of like naturally expand. So overall, I mean, for me, I think anytime you have sort of that barely there upper construction on a shoe, I'm probably going to default like it, because I think that my foot kind of grows a lot in runs, like just from like swelling and stuff. And it was just roomy enough. So yeah, the upper for me was probably the part that I liked the most about this shoe. How about you?
I liked the materials of it. I just couldn't get the fit right. And I think part of that was a length thing, and then this other, bit that was ramming into my foot. But I like the type of mesh that they used. I like the beefier toe bumper. I really like the amount of foam they used around the heel cup. It just wasn't quite the right amount of ingredients to agree with my foot. Can we move on to like the underfoot?
Yeah, of course.
Feel. I could tell, like, as soon as I put this shoe on, I was like, oh, I bet Finn's gonna like this shoe, and I might not like this shoe, because it's a firmer shoe. Like it's a little bit beefier, protective shoe, and like my default is something a little bit softer than this. Like a few shoes that I wrote down that like I thought kind of competed against this, that we've already had on the channel. The Adidas Agravic Flow 2. Like this shoe reminded me of that a lot. The On Cloud Ultra 2 that we just reviewed. And then two other shoes that we haven't reviewed but reminded me of this were the Saucony Peregrine and the Brooks Cascadia. So kind of all in that dense to firmer, very protective, like meant for mountain running type shoe. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think, and I probably would throw this back to you just because you've had more experience in this stuff. But my understanding with like the piece of EVA foam they have in here is the more miles you get into it, the more flexible it will become, the more break-in will be there, and it makes the ride feel more natural over time. That's certainly how I felt. Like I think once I got to about the 50-mile mark in this shoe, it became infinitely more comfortable, infinitely more flexible, which was similar to how I felt with the Agravic Flow 2. I sort of got past that like 30 to 40 mile barrier in the shoe, and it kind of like opened up a new world. And I think that's pretty typical of EVA, right?
Yeah, especially firmer EVA. I mean, like a soft EVA that feels great out of the box, you're just going to kill it in 100 or 150 miles. But then like a dense EVA like this, you're right, like is going to need probably 50 miles to settle in. But then kind of like how we've talked about in some previous episodes, like the Goldilocks zone of the shoe is a little bit later, like probably on that 150 to 300 mile range. And then depending on the type of EVA, sometimes once you hit the end of it, it just like putties out and just feels like crap. Sometimes it, firms out, or the way it packs out ends up feeling great, and then you can keep going for a couple hundred more miles. But yeah, I mean, you very much described like what a traditional firmer EVA is going to feel like. And up in the mountains, that's not a bad choice. How did you feel about the grip and protection underfoot of the shoe?
Pretty good. Yeah. I mean, I took some pretty demanding descents in this shoe, like 30 to 40% grade stuff where just everything was loose rock under me. There were a couple like mid-afternoon classic high mountain thunderstorms that, like I got caught in with, our buddy Caleb, made for, wet rock, wet surfaces, went across some bogs and stuff like that. And I generally got the sense that with these lugs, maybe it was the multi-directional feature that I'm not really giving due credit to. Like it all worked. I felt like it was pretty solid for everything I put it through. One more thing I wanted to say about the midsole, because I think that this is typically a critique of all these shoes that are made with recyclable materials, like durability comes into question. I've put 100 miles in the shoe and I don't feel like I've experienced any durability issues with either the upper or the midsole. And I think that that's important to acknowledge, because I feel like when people think recycled materials, they think like, oh yeah, like, am I going to need to turn this shoe in after 50 or 100 miles? Like, is it a much shorter shelf life? And I'm going to actually keep wearing this shoe whenever I have the time, just out of curiosity, but have not experienced any breakdown yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm definitely asking you a lot of these questions, because I don't have enough miles to really speak on behalf of the durability. But I mean, after 40 miles, the shoe still feels brand new. Yeah, and I think that denser EVA is going to provide sufficient rock protection. And I would hope that a mountain company like Scarpa has pretty good in-house rubber, and that does seem to be the case here. Some of the like running brands don't have the greatest in-house rubber, but a lot of the mountain brands, mountaineering brands, they have pretty good outsole rubber. So I don't see why Scarpa would need to partner with anyone, at least for this shoe, for a different outsole compound. So what did Scarpa design this shoe for, and does it hold true? On their website, they mostly just talk about sustainability of the shoe and like not much about what you're supposed to do in it. The one bit that I did pull was like high cushion shoe meant for the long haul. It's like a European high cushion shoe, in my opinion. It's not an American high cushion shoe. With that being said, definitely meant for the long haul. I mean, it completed the Hardrock 100 in faster than anyone else this year. That's a pretty long haul. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I feel like I'm a broken record on this, but I'm always on the lookout for a shoe that could be all purpose for that consumer watching this channel that needs something that could solve multiple scenarios in their trail running life in one shoe. And I mean, I genuinely think you could run a 100 miler in this. You could run a trail half marathon in this. You could take this on the roads and consider it a door to trail shoe if you want. I genuinely think that for someone out there that's trying to buy one shoe to rule them all, this could be your Swiss Army knife. And I like that you said that, Europeans have sort of a different take on like a more highly cushioned shoe. This doesn't feel like particularly soft or particularly overly cushioned underfoot. And I think, it actually is a pretty light shoe in a lot of ways, for something that's trying to be a lot of different things in the scene. So I would definitely put, I know I'm kind of rambling, but I would put this in the category of could solve a lot of problems. It could be like a B+ shoe in so many different scenarios.
Yeah. I think that's a good take. I think of the shoes that we've run in that we put in that Swiss Army knife category, I'm not going to pull this for most of those, just because I want something that's just a little bit softer. Like even Honestly, like one of the Swiss Army knife shoes that's grown on me so much is the On Cloud Ultra 2 that we just reviewed.
100%.
Like
100%.
I like that one a little bit more than this, although this can handle the burlier mountains a little bit better. But the Nike Wild Horse 8 is still the Swiss Army knife shoe that I'm going to pull probably over all three of them.
We should do a Swiss Army knife episode at some point.
Yeah, we might need to do just like the one shoe that you run in. Would
I
you
agree
race?
with those, though.
Would you race in this shoe?
Yeah, I would. I actually may. I might after this review, we were talking offline. I might go do some sort of roadblock this fall, but right after that, I will be dipping right back into trail stuff. I could totally see myself doing a summer 100-miler in this shoe in 2024, and I might actually keep this shoe, out back in the library, whatever you call it, my shoebox to keep it on hand. Because I got 100 miles in it, and I think that's right about the sweet point for race day. So you might actually see me wearing this shoe next summer at some sort of UTMB event, or the Wasatch 100 or something. I've loved it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a pretty big deal now whenever you race, like what shoes you're wearing, because that's going to be like the ultimate seal of approval. Even if this was the correct size, you're not going to find me racing in this shoe. For like ultra distances, 50 miles, 100K up, I want something a little bit more cushioned. For anything shorter than that, I want something a little bit lighter weight and nimble. So like this just doesn't check either of those boxes, which a lot of the times for me is the problem with that Swiss Army knife, is that it's just not quite specific enough for like what I want it for. So this one would squarely go into the like junk miles category for me. Like that's just my honest take. Like it's just not the shoe that I'm going to pick to race in. It's $159. I'm rounding that up to 160. For 160, let's see. So the Cascadia 17 is $140. The Peregrine's $140. The On Cloud Ultra 2 is $180. The Wild Horse 8 is $130. This is $160. It seems reasonable, right? Like it's firmer than some of the other shoes that we, reviewed, which, can, you've led me to believe that you might get a few more miles out of this shoe. So for 160, might not be too bad. Where does this land on the value scale for you?
Gosh, now that you framed it like that, push comes to shove. Yeah, I'm very much on the Nike Wild Horse 8 train with you. I had a few issues with that On shoe. I loved that On shoe, but I had a few issues with it. I think in the hierarchy, I'm going like 140 for the Wild Horse 8 is a screaming deal in this context.
130.
Sorry, 130.
Yeah.
130.
Like I feel like this needs to be like $20 cheaper for me to like really put it in that competitive market.
I mean,
it's a very saturated market what Scarpa is trying to get into.
I think they could find that $20 in the supply chain, right? They could just like drop down all of the bells and whistles that come in the box.
Yeah, they could have just like quit wasting so much money with all of their instruction booklets and stuff and knock $20 off. I guess if anything, Scarpa should counter argue back and say that the reason it cost 160 is we had to spend a little bit more money to, recycle and reuse some materials and the technology that goes into that instead of just using new materials. So like if they put a spin on the price for like sustainability, I think that could help with the purchasing decision and knowing that your dollars are going towards keeping the planet spinning. I think that checks all the boxes I have for this review. I mean, I'm curious to anyone listening if they've run in any Scarpa shoes before. Have you tried this one? This one's been out for a minute. So if you're running it, what do you think? Have you run in any other Scarpas? Is there room in your shoe closet for this shoe? What's your go-to right now? At the current moment, where we're towards the end of August, so this will probably publish beginning of September. Like, what's been your best value shoe this year? We're nearing the fall. We're about 3/4 of the way through the year. Like, we've gotten in a lot of running. Like, what's your best value shoe? Thanks for everyone who's hung out this long. Feel free to like this video, subscribe to the channel. It helps us continue to do more shoe reviews like this. The year is not over. We've still got plenty more shoes that we're going to review. So with that being said, we should probably go running, get in some miles. We'll see everyone in the next shoe review.